Hello, folks. Welcome to my first ever episode of the Matias Sports Podcast, and I have a wonderful guest with me. His name is Adam Giardino. He's a play-by-play broadcaster. Introduce yourself, Adam.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ken. So I'm a play-by-play broadcaster up in the New England area, based out of central Massachusetts. Grew up in Massachusetts and have spent a lot of time, 10 years in minor league baseball. From there, really wanted to focus on college athletics, and so that's where I've been. And so the majority of my time right now is spent covering the University of Connecticut, all of their sports, and Harvard and Northeastern, Holy Cross, Brown, Providence College, UMass. I've just been bouncing all over New England.
Oh, that's super cool. I mean, let's get into like your career and stuff. Like, how did you like end up like starting from one area to the next till obviously today, May 10th, 2024?
Yeah, so I graduated college in 2011, went to University of Connecticut, and just fell in love with the student radio station and just knew that from the first men's soccer game that I ever did there that this was what I wanted to pursue. And so got involved right away when I was a student in undergrad, focused on that for 4 years, and was able to start my career by while I was still in college. I was an intern for the Pawtucket Red Sox back when they still existed.
Yep.
And so that was 2010, 2011. Back then there wasn't the overwhelming amount of college reps in terms of, ESPN Plus. Every school covers
hmm
all their sports nowadays. And I mean, as we're talking, I just came off of doing the sailing national championships on ESPN Plus. I've got 5 conference championships for rowing coming up. I mean, that was light years away in 2011 when I graduated college. And honestly, for back then, it was all right. Do I want to pursue minor league baseball or minor league hockey? Those were the reps that were
hmm
available for someone in my situation. And so it was definitely minor league baseball. In 2012, went to do the Lakewood Blue Claws, which was the Phillies single A. Then the next 5 years, I was fortunate to get the opportunity to work in the Yankees double A organization, the Trenton Thunder, and then 3 years in triple A with Scranton Wilkes-Barre. And again, it was in 2014 was when I first really started to dive into college athletics, but 2017, 2018, once I got involved again with my alma mater, with UConn, and I was splitting time between Scranton and the Northeast, where I thought, okay, I really want to transition and do college sports full time. So that's where it is. And ironically, I live about 10 minutes from Polar Park, just outside of Worcester, Mass. And so I've done a handful of Woo Sox games now in AAA this season. So it's all come full circle and keeping me plenty busy.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's great to hear for somebody, that's been out of school like 13, 14 years. I'm not trying to call you old, I'm just saying.
When I say 2011, and I feel like it is just a year or two ago, and then you
Yeah, it
look and you
does.
think, boy, it's been well over a decade at this point. Yeah.
But I mean, obviously it's ups and downs. It's a lot of like freelance work. You've been trying to make it work full time, and I give you a lot of credit for that too as well. Um, I mean, what good advice would you give maybe a person like me or somebody trying to get into the industry? Just do more reps and like get involved in, connections and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's huge. Is I think the bottom line is your tape doesn't lie. I was told that by countless people, but it's Aaron Goldsmith, who is one of the voices of the Seattle Mariners, told me
hmm
that. And it's so true because he is somebody that he went to college at a liberal arts school in the Midwest, but knew that he wanted to do broadcasting. And so he just went out and called a couple of high school games into his phone. He sent that tape off to the Portland Sea Dogs. He became the number 2 broadcaster for Portland,
Wow.
jumped to AAA. And I mean, less than 10 years after thinking, okay, I want to do this, that he became a major league broadcaster. And now that's a quick ascent and a quick rise. And he's
Yeah, for
obviously
sure.
supremely talented. He is
hmm
supremely talented, but it just goes to show that, for someone in my shoes, where I have the journalism degree and the communications degree, and I have all these years of experience, that someone like, a Noah Eagle, who is
hmm
20 something years old and getting to do these nationally high profile games. I mean, sure, his last name is Eagle, and that doesn't hurt when Ian's your father. And I say it doesn't hurt because I can only imagine the guidance that he's gotten over the course of time. But the bottom line is, if you didn't know that was his name and that was his father, and you turn on Nickelodeon watching one of those high profile games that he gets to do over there among, the more serious platformed ESPN games.
Hmm.
That's just a guy that should be calling games at a high level. So the tape doesn't lie. And the fastest way you can make that happen is by working on the craft and making sure that anytime you get the opportunity to do a real rep, that you take it seriously to the point where you're not just calling the game, but you're going back and reviewing it. I mean, athletes, the most successful Major League Baseball players are the ones that go back and watch their 4 at bats every day and just see if they see anything and learn. And they study tape. And as broadcasters, it is so important for us to do that as well. And I took that advice supremely to heart. And I think that is something that even over a decade into my career, I still am super diligent about, is just making sure that if I'm doing something during a 3-hour broadcast and I watch it back and something catches my ear in the wrong way, that I make a note of it and say, okay, that's something that I need to change, do differently. And, there's no right or wrong way to broadcast in a lot of ways. It's an art form, which is a beautiful thing, but you as the broadcaster know what you're capable of, know what you're trying to do, and you're the one that can really guide your ship the best.
Yeah, no, that's pretty amazing. I mean, good stories you mentioned with Adam and Noah. I mean, the Adam story really caught my attention. I mean, he went from high school, didn't even go to the college level, and then he went to Double A, Portland, the Red Sox affiliate. Like, that's amazing. Like, that is talent because many people do it for high school. I don't know how many years he did high school, but a lot of people do it in high school for many, many years, get their chance at the college level. Now it's probably a little easier with ESPN Plus platforms.
And I'm thinking back to that story that he told me. And when it was high school, I don't even think he wasn't working for a station
Hmm.
he literally just went to a couple of high school games near his house and just sat in the stands and called the game into his phone. I mean, so it wasn't even as if like, he wasn't getting paid to go call high school
Hmm.
basketball. He just went to a high school and just called the game into his phone. And so that's, to me, even if it's funny, there's my website, where I post all of my materials. I have a couple of demos on there, football and basketball, that are mock broadcast, but I called them into a headset and I just showed up to an event, got a credential, called the game, and that's my demo because it had been too
Wow.
many years between calling basketball. My demo was 3 or 4 years out of date, and I wanted to make sure it was updated and it was it was as fresh as it could sound. So I really am a huge proponent of creating those opportunities for yourself and making sure that you're always trying to find ways to improve.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously the industry around here is super, super competitive, super tough. You got kids going to these high profile universities that probably want to do the same thing. But obviously what I've been told from the little experiences I've dealt with, interning at Channel 5 and stuff like that, if you want to become a sports anchor, you got to go to the Midwest. So if you want to do that, you got to go out Midwest, you got to go to
Hmm.
Florida, whatever it is to make it work. Obviously I can't, priorities set in. So it's good, going back to the ESPN Plus stuff, Adam. I mean, that's ESPN Plus has been around what, maybe 5 years, if that, 6 years,
Yeah, and I mean, shoot, at this point, what year are we? 2024? I mean, it's probably
2024. Yeah.
been, yeah, I mean, it's probably been 10 years at this point that stuff's
Oh,
been, and
wow.
obviously
Okay.
it's really a lot more conferences have bought in, but I
Hmm.
was doing Ivy League on ESPN
Three,
back in
right?
yeah, it was ESPN 3,
Three.
ESPN
Yep.
Plus back in 2015, 2014, 2015 at
Wow.
Brown. So yeah, I mean, but that's just the proliferation of sports and just the ability to get more stuff out there.
Hmm. And then I know you mentioned I want to go back to Noah. I mean, I've had little conversations with him on Twitter, and he seems like a super general, nice guy. Obviously he learned from his dad, Iron Eagle, but I don't know. He seems like he's ready for like to take the next step. I know he was doing a lot of stuff with the Clippers, took an NBC job, I believe. I don't know if he was calling some of the Notre Dame or college football action on Saturdays.
I know that most recently his biggest stuff has been, the Brooklyn Nets just getting an opportunity to
Yes,
to
that
do
too.
games on Yes Network. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, that's also, it's a beautiful thing where there are, it's good and bad, where you could see somebody be on the Big Ten Network and then
Hmm.
Yes Network and ESPN, and the non-compete clause type stuff doesn't really exist as much. Obviously, at the higher level, once you become Joe Buck, it does.
Hmm.
You're signed with Fox and that's who you stay with. But outside, well, and then you get rid of your Fox contract and you're
And
over
go to
ESPN. So
ESPN.
I mean, like, but the those individual silos of networks, there's a lot more cross pollination now than there used to be, which again is great. It allows the talented people to get opportunities that are deserving of it, and it's a good thing.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, like I keep saying, it's competitive. There's a lot of people that want to get into it, males and females. Kudos to all the kids that actually get the opportunity. But I mean, ESPN Plus, I can't praise it enough. It's great for people. Good platform to watch any kind of, baseball, volleyball. I feel like they have all like
Mm-hmm.
the college stuff. They got to deal with the NHL with the power play for the season. They got like I believe it's like one game a day for Major League Baseball, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that they have
Yeah.
like an ESPN Plus. So, I mean, yeah, I just want to kind of switch gears. Obviously, you're a UConn alum. I don't know a lot about college basketball and women and, men's, but congratulations on winning the national championship last month. I wanted your thoughts on both, the women's and the men's game for UConn. Um, how coach, what is it, Dan Hurley and Gino Oriema. I mean, it seems like they run their programs to like a pristine fine tune. So just wanted you to
Yeah.
elaborate a little more on UConn basketball.
Yeah, but the men's team, it's just been incredible. When I was an undergrad, they made two Final Fours,
Hmm.
2009, then 2011 was when Kemba Walker helped
Yep.
make that run to the title. Um, it was that was a magical run. It really cemented my love for college athletics. Just being around UConn in general for 4 years really did. And now fast forward, like you said, 13 years, and they've now won three more titles. They won in 2014, they won last year, they've won it this year. Dan Hurley was the absolute perfect hire for this program. He's an absolute maniac in all the best ways, and he would take that as a compliment. He's just somebody that the thing that stuck out to me when he was hired and everyone was, getting to know more about him. He was hired from University of Rhode Island, so he was
Hmm.
local enough. He's a New Jersey guy, so it's not as if this was a culture shock of somebody coming in from, Texas and trying to learn Connecticut in the Northeast. He knew it. And the writers were just kind of saying, all right, getting to know him, his family. And then somebody said, do you golf? Do you fish? What are your hobbies? And he just said basketball. And that's the honest to God truth. And I don't know, because he's also been very frank about how much he puts into his basketball life.
Hmm.
It's a lot. And I mean, emotionally, like, this is somebody that you see coaches on the sideline and you go, I wonder if this is good for his health. I mean, Dan Hurley is one of those guys where you see him coaching on the sideline and you wonder, I wonder how sustainable this is. And he's acknowledged that he's not going to be somebody that coaches into his maybe even his 60s. He could be somebody that is in his 50s and we get a surprise announcement one day that he's just done.
Hmm.
And he's certainly he admires Gino Oriema, but he knows he's not going to have the longevity of a Gino Oriema,
Hmm.
and he just wants to make sure he doesn't burn out before he walks away. And that is, he is doing everything right now to live his life to win national titles, and he is successful in doing all of that. It's been a real treat to see somebody with that kind of passion and that single-mindedness take over a program that has such history, that has four national titles and now has six. And so he's really special. And I don't think I need to be the one to say that. I think other people know that. And Gene Oriem on the women's side is the same way. And he is just somebody that he's accomplished something that will never be repeated. I mean, the wins and the Final Fours and the national championships, but making over a dozen straight Final Fours is something that will never be matched. It's much the same on the men's side when you look at the prowess of UCLA under John Wooden, and you go, well,
Hmm.
that's of a different era, and we're only just barely removed from that with UConn, but them missing out on the Final Four 2 years ago, not this past year, they made it, but 2 years ago, missing out on the Final Four, snapped that streak. And as soon as it ended, you knew it would never be matched again. And so that's beautiful for women's basketball as a whole, that
Hmm.
players are going off to a bunch of different schools, USC and Iowa, and they're getting all the big recruits. It's not just, it's not just UConn getting all the big recruits. And um, that's a good thing for the sport. And so for Gino, he's got at least one more year in my head. And I don't think I'm speaking too out of turn. He's got Paige Beckers and AZ Fudd, who will be
Hmm.
wrapping up their college careers this year. It seems like a pretty logical, especially if they win the national title. This could be a nice place for him to step aside as well. Kathy, his wife, has um, done enough to earn a little one-on-one time with her husband
Yeah.
finally. It's been a lifetime for her. She travels on all the trips. She loves all the players. She's the team mom. There's no doubt
Oh,
about
that's
it. But
awesome.
there's definitely, I think a logical off ramp this year with Paige, who's going to be the number one pick in the WNBA
Hmm.
draft, with AZ Fudd wrapping up her career. She'll have an extra year because of injuries, but it would make sense for her to depart with Paige as well, off to greener pastures. It could be the right time for him to step aside. So I don't think any UConn fan is watching this year and not appreciating that this could be one of the last couple of times that we get to see Gino Auriemma coach a team, especially the way he coached them last year. Through all the injuries, three of their top six players went out for the year with injuries, and he still got them to the Final Four and got them within one basket of knocking off Caitlin Clark in Iowa. It was a special year.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And it's a good thing you brought up Paige Beckers. I mean, I follow it, due to ESPN and stuff like that. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
fan. I'm not gonna say I'm not a fan, but it is interesting, the men and women's game. And I felt like I was glued a little more to the women's game because obviously the Clark hype, Paige Beckers, Angel Reese, all these great players that have already transitioned to the WNBA, and some are still in school. But so Paige is on her fifth year, I want to say.
Yeah, yeah, she's
So
had two
because
major knee injuries.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why she gets the extra year of eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, she probably could have came out this year in the WNBA draft then. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and she's got a lot to play for. I mean, she was never going to surpass Caitlin Clark as the number one pick this
Yeah.
year. But all eyes are going to be on Paige Beckers next year in women's college hoops, and so it's on her to make it happen.
Yeah, so going back to you the broadcaster, but still
Yeah,
sticking in the UConn stuff. I know I'm like shifting gears back and forth. What do you like calling the best? Is it the men's or the women's game for basketball?
I like for me, college basketball is the same. It
Hmm.
really is. I think there are a lot of people that would very much differentiate men's and women's basketball, but I view it as absolutely the same sport. And so, especially at a place like UConn where you're going to get 10,000 people, whether it's the men's or the women's team, the
Yeah.
atmosphere is the same. It's special no matter what you're calling, no matter what you're there for. I know at other schools that would be different. And I mean, I am at I do men's and women's basketball at Northeastern as well, and
Hmm.
men's and women's basketball at Harvard. And even those sports, they're the same. I mean, those teams at their respective schools get the same energy, get the same support from students and from the local community. So it's going to be rare to find a school where a good men's team and women's team doesn't get the same support nowadays, which is a good thing.
Hmm.
Because again, back when I was a student, the women's games would sell out, and it was one of the few places in the country where that would be the case. And now that is not the case. And so it's just a really good thing for sports. So for me, I have a certain hierarchy with sports in general of what I like to call more than the other, but women and men's basketball, it's the same thing for me.
Do you do other programs too? Like, I want to bring up like the hockey side, football, baseball. So you call those games too?
Yeah, yeah. So as we record this, I've got UConn baseball coming up tomorrow. I did all the softball home games for TV. UConn baseball we do on radio. So I'll be
Hmm.
traveling. 2 years ago, we made it all the way to the super regionals. So I was out in Stanford for that. Last year, we made it to the Gainesville regional, Florida. This year, we'll be traveling out, doing the Big East tournament out in Ohio. And then, knock on wood, UConn should be getting a bid into the NCAA tournament again this year.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's, lacrosse, men's and women's hockey, field hockey, and football, like you said. So it's men's and women's soccer.
Yep.
Yeah, it's everything, every single
How,
thing.
how do you do it? You just got to transition and game plan from one sport to the next. That's a lot.
It is.
That's
There. You
That's
know,
impressive, honestly, from lacrosse. Do you do lacrosse too?
women's lacrosse,
Wow.
I do in the spring for UConn. Yeah, it is. It's different. I mean, and again, for like, you know, I do every football game for UConn. So on Saturday you're
Hmm.
doing football, but Friday night you've either got men's or women's soccer, Sunday men's or women's soccer, then that's the fall. So volleyball is
Yep.
going on. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of different things. It's a lot of terminology. And that's something huge is to it's been humbling in the sense that you learn about sports. I mean, I didn't
Hmm.
grow up around volleyball, let's say,
Yeah.
but by
Yep.
talking to coaches, by talking to athletes, I've slowly built in knowledge. But it's important not to pretend to know more than you do at that time. I mean, I'd like to think I'm an expert in baseball. I've called over 1,500 games. I mean, that's the
Wow.
sport I am
Yeah.
most comfortable with doing 140 games a year times 10 years plus some college. Like that's 1,500 baseball games. I know
Hmm.
baseball. Um, I if I tried to pretend, I mean, it's one thing to be confident, but it's if I tried to pretend that I knew the nuances of volleyball the way that I know baseball, it would be a disservice to the audience. So making sure that you deliver information in a way that you're comfortable in and that doesn't overpromise your knowledge of the sport is huge. And I think there's no greater example of that than what I did last 2 weekends ago with the sailing national championships. I got to work with two former sailors, one of whom was the alternate on the U.S. Olympic team in 2012. I mean, that guy Clay Johnson is going to, you know, before we started those broadcasts, it was 4 days, 25 hours of coverage.
Hmm.
I did all the prep work, I did the research on the athletes, but when we met in person, I said, Clay, I am going to do my best to make sure I don't say things that I don't know. And so I'm going to be leaning on you and asking questions of
Hmm.
you to bring the expertise. I know the athletes, I'm going to be able to tell their stories, but I'm not going to be able to talk about what the dynamics of team racing and when to tack and when to do all these other things. It's like, oh, first thing within 50 seconds of the first race, Clay's like, oh, Stanford's really luffing their jib there. And if I've ever heard the sentence luffing their jib, if that phrase ever crossed my life in the first 35 years, I don't remember it. So it's those sort of things where even the whole weekend, I knew what that phrase meant, but it never felt authentic to me. I let him have it. I never
Hmm.
said luffing that, but I knew when it was, I saw the athletes doing it, but it just wasn't the space or the time for me to say it. So again, um, when you're calling multiple sports like that, it's so important to be authentic to what the audience knows. Because again, if you're watching sailing on ESPN Plus, you also probably know a lot more about sailing than me. And
Oh,
I
yeah,
I was
yeah.
very comfortable with that reality.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't even know what to start, calling sailing, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, it's reps and experience, and people look at it that way. But yeah, I give you all the credit. I mean, obviously, baseball's your forte. I mean, that's my forte too. I love all the four major sports for sure. But I grew up playing baseball. I never made it far, but I've admired the game, the minor league system too. And, having the ability to talk to scouts last year while doing, stuff for cable access that was like Google Gaga for me. I love that. Like that was
Yeah.
amazing, to talk to them, kind of pick their brains, how, this works and things like that. But um yeah, I'm just trying to remember like what else I should ask you. So um switching another gear. So a little bit about the Woo Sox. How do you like doing those games on the radio for them?
Yeah, it's a different experience because when I'm doing minor league baseball for 10 years, I'm
Hmm.
the voice of those teams. And so I don't have to do any research on quote unquote my team. I mean, I know these
Yeah.
guys. I'm riding buses with them. We're getting off at rest stops at 3 in the morning to get a bag of chips because we hadn't eaten since 8 in the morning. It's just like the
Wow.
crazy stuff that minor league life is all about.
Hmm.
And um, so this year with the Woo Sox, it's been different because it's only been a handful of games. It's home games, of course, but I don't have those personal relationships with guys, and I don't get to tell stories in the same way that I would love to tell stories um, where you're just you pick up things because you're on the bus and it's like, man, tell me about your hometown. And just getting to learn about where somebody grew up and, oh,
Yeah.
it's 40 minutes outside of this city. And then it's like, oh, okay, did you end up, how often would your family go into Asheville, North Carolina? Whatever it is. And
Hmm.
you just try to piece together someone's life. And I don't have those, it's different. So it's a little bit drier. It's a little bit more statistical based. It's a little bit more action on the field based, which is fine, but it's just a different experience. And you don't get to build those relationships, those
Hmm.
friendships, which over the years, it's something that I, I can't say that it's something that, my phone is filled with numbers of guys that I covered in 10 years, and I'm always texting all these former players that have gone on to the big leagues, but those friendships remain, and it's
Hmm.
just nice to have, spent time with guys and just kind of gotten to know them a little bit away from the field because minor league baseball, it stinks. It absolutely
Yeah.
stinks. It's gotten better
Hmm.
since I've departed in terms of lifestyle and pay and travel and all of that. It's gotten better in a way that was necessary, but it still doesn't make it any more any easier or any less of a grind mentally for the guys that are going through it trying to get to their ultimate goal.
Hmm. No, yeah, for sure. I mean, staying on the minor league topic, I mean, obviously when the Paw Sox were in Pawtucket, as you obviously interned and worked for them and stuff like that, I was able to actually have like a pass just to kind of cover, interview some guys. I met like William Cuevas, I think Devin Marrero, if I'm saying his name right,
Yep.
the former
Yep.
shortstop for the
Marrero.
Red
Yeah.
Sox. It
Oh
was
yeah.
cool being in that atmosphere. Blanking on the manager's name, but it was Kevin something. I'm blanking on his name right now.
Bowles.
Thank you, Kevin Bowles. I don't even know if he's
Yeah.
in baseball anymore, but it was cool going in his office and stuff like that. But it's just these guys are just right after a game, they're showering, doing whatever, and it's just now it's interview time. So that was a pretty unique experience doing that on my own time, not getting paid to go. But um, I know we're running out of time, but one last thing, what's been like your favorite player to cover between the Trenton years to the Woo Sox, the Paw Sox years, like just kind of jumping around in the minor leagues that actually made it to the big leagues? What's been like your favorite player to cover at least or say?
Yeah, we only got 60 games with him, but he's one of the players that was really just special and kind, and um it's a story I love to tell. I mean, so Aaron Judge was
Hmm.
a guy that um he was just he's the son of two school teachers, and that's you would just know it from talking to him for 2 seconds. And I guess it's because things change. And is he the
Hmm.
exact same person that he was in 2016 when he was still coming
Probably
up?
not.
Probably not. But the stories that I've heard of people that are around him still, I mean, he's got to keep his circle tighter, but he's
Hmm.
still just a really good person. And so, I mean, um, he's somebody that for 60 games, he got to, we talk about bad travel. Well, Trenton had one bus. So it was 30 plus people on one bus traveling from
Wow.
city to city. And at 6'8", 280 pounds, Aaron Judge needed his own seat. He didn't have to double
Yeah.
up. And so he sat behind me. And so we got to chat for a couple of months, just traveling wherever and just getting to know about him. Um, the silver lining of him getting promoted to AAA and never coming back down was that I actually got to recline in my bus seat again because I was not going to be the guy that reclined and forced Aaron Judge onto the disabled list because he had to tie himself into a pretzel to fit into the seat because I needed to recline. So, he's just somebody that always sticks out to me. And I know it's an easy name drop to have, but it's so true that he is one of the five kindest people that
Hmm.
we had in our time in the minors. So yeah, he's somebody truly special. When I was the 1 year I was in Lakewood single A, Mike Calfranco is the one guy that really made it to the big leagues. Trenton obviously had a ton of guys: Gary Sanchez, Aaron Judge, Elise Severino, Greg Bird for a while. Yeah, just a bunch of guys that had
Hmm.
gone up and had success, and yeah, Gleyber Torres, of course, as well. So yeah, it was a fun decade in minor league baseball, and it served me well getting me to the spot that I am today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one last thing, do you still keep in touch with Aaron for sure, or like, communicate even if it's on social media or like, texting, stuff like that?
So when he went up to the big leagues and he homered in his first game, I texted him, and everything was great. And um I I survived one phone number change.
Oh,
And I
there you
don't,
go.
but I don't have his current phone. No, I have not. I don't have any.
Oh,
So, which is, yeah,
jeez.
I know, which is fine. And again, I don't, it's, if I was Aaron Judge, I'm sure I would, I got bigger things to worry about. But I did make it up to Yankee Stadium and we saw each other. I mean, so,
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So
So,
you
I mean, it's,
guys,
yeah, don't have his number, but we are still, we
yeah,
cross paths
at
with
least
each
you
other.
guys,
We're
yeah,
friends.
met up again. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, wrapping this up, I really appreciate you being, doing this for me and being part of my podcast. I mean, if you want to give out your socials, go for it, where people can find you and follow you, and even your website too.
Yeah. So the name's Adam Giardino, Adam, and then last name is Giardino. That's my Twitter handle. That is my website as well, adamgiardino.com. And Ken, thanks so much for putting this together. And it was a blast to be on here chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I hope you have a good night and good luck with all your broadcasting as well.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.